All right. Thank you so much.
Great. Well, thanks so much for having me, Sarah, and I'm glad to be here. We appreciate you guys so much and the work that you do supporting children and families. We're just glad to be connected to CASA on a state level and then locally too. I know the work that happens in Nashville is really, really important. And I also get to see many of you on our foster care review boards. I'll talk a little bit about some of the work that we got it. That was Elizabeth. She was on a call and I asked her to pop in and help us troubleshoot, but we got it, obviously. Sarah, thank you. Um, but anyway, part of the work that I do is support foster care review boards across the state. So I'm in Davidson County sometimes at the juvenile court supporting foster care review boards, and I see some of you there because I know that some of you do not um, only provide service to CASA, you also provide service to your courts through foster care review board. And we are really, really glad that you do that. We're really grateful for your service in any and every capacity that you provide it. It's so important to our children and our families. And we'll talk a little bit about how it's set up here in Tennessee, but we literally can't do it without you. It's statutory. So we're really grateful to you guys. So here's a little bit of information about the court improvement program, because I know that the court improvement program is sort of a different sort of organization inside the administrative office of the courts. And some folks, hear CIP, court improvement, AOC, and they're not sure what the distinction is, how we fit inside the AOC. So I'll talk a little bit about that today. First off, here's our team. So you see Stacy Lynch is our director. I'm program attorney. We have a statistical research specialist, that's Rumian. He does all our evaluation and data. If you've been a part of any of our trainings, you've taken the survey to provide feedback after the training. Rumian gathers all that information and makes it digestible for us, so we can make sure that we're hitting our marks and getting you guys, our community, the information that you need to do the work that you do to support children in courts and families. Elizabeth Witt is our project coordinator. When I said Elizabeth does this for us all the time, you want me to grab her? That is who I was talking about. And she just poked her head in after she got off her call to say she was available, but of course we got it figured out. So that's Elizabeth between the flags there. She's a lot of fun, and I'm glad we have a great team. I'm glad I get to work with these folks, and it goes pretty well. Okay, so what is the court improvement program? So I know that I have a little bar I'm gonna put up so you can. Okay, so the court improvement program was created by the federal government, by Congress, back in 1993. So it's been around a while. We are federally funded. So while we work in the Tennessee state government, our funds are almost exclusively federal funds. So just like every state has a child welfare agency, our child welfare agency is the Department of Children's Services. We call it DCS. Every state also has a CIP, a court improvement program. And by congressional authority, that court improvement program is required to be in the highest court of every state. So it's meant to support the court side of the child welfare system, because the way that Congress set up child welfare in America was on two parallel tracks. There's this child welfare agency track that's doing all the custodial work, the casework, the family work. There's also this court track that sort of provides some oversight over that child welfare work. And it is an essential piece. It's a built-in accountability system. And because there is this court requirement and this agency requirement, the federal government, Congress set it up so that the court side of the child welfare system also had support and also had federal funding to have support. And that's us. So that's the court improvement program. So in every state, the court improvement program is providing support for dependency and neglect. And one of the things that we get questions about sometimes is some of that delinquency stuff and delinquency work on that end of the court system, that's not what we're funded to do. Of course, our work touches that. Everybody who's worked with kids in foster care understand that there's a huge risk for delinquency for kids that come into contact with dependency and neglect processes. And so I look at our work in supporting better, safer child welfare in Tennessee as being preventative of delinquency. And of course, we have contact with delinquency systems. We have a juvenile court manager in our office. She doesn't work for our team, but she works 2 offices down from me. And so we are, very connected and supporting our judges and judicial officers in all different aspects. We're funded particularly under dependency and neglect. So that's always our focus. And then we pull in some other aspects of the work that our courts are doing in an effort, to be supportive. But that's what our funding is connected to. So our funding is administered by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the Children's Bureau. That's that same pot of dollars that DCS is getting their federal funding from. DCS is supported by federal and state funds. A portion of their federal funds, most of their federal funds, come under the Social Security Act. And that's where most of our funding comes from as well. So it's all part of the same puzzle to support children and families. And that is an important, an important perspective to have in our work, that we are literally in this together. We're coming from the same funding source, which is the federal government to support child welfare. And our work has to be coordinated in a way that supports better outcomes for children and families. That's our responsibility. And I think we take it pretty seriously. So we've been around in the Tennessee AOC. So the Administrative Office of the Courts, where I work, the AOC, is the Administrative Office of the Supreme Court. So when Congress said you have to have a CIP in the highest court in every state, that is, for us, that's the AOC, because we are the Administrative Office of the Tennessee Supreme Court. So that is why we fit here. That's why the CIP belongs to the AOC, because in order to be in receipt of those funds, it has to be here in this spot, so that we can provide support for all of our courts all across the country. Well, but in here, only in Tennessee, obviously. So what is the Court Improvement Program? So we have, of course, if you guys run on grants too, I think, to a certain extent. And so you're familiar with the requirements that sometimes come with grants and grantors. For the federal government, we have to do certain things. And so one of the things that we have to do around dependency and neglect is have certain projects that support safety, well-being, and timely permanence of children in foster care, support engagement of families in child welfare cases, and improve collaboration with the Department of Children's Services. I will say that I work with local DCS staff in my support of foster care review boards in courts across Tennessee, but on a regular basis, we're more connected to the central office folks. So there is a central office person. She came from Davidson, so you probably know Channing Tuttle. She supports Channing supports foster care review board from the central office at DCS. So I work with her all the time. And then we work with the counsel's office, general counsel's office at DCS. We work with those folks all the time. And then I'll work with local DCS folks in different regions across Tennessee as it supports the foster care review board when we're working through an issue or supporting better processes around foster care review board. So that's sort of how I interact with DCS. So we are required to have a strategic plan in order to be in receipt of the funding. One of the things that we are required to have is a joint project with the Child Welfare Agency. So every CIP and Child Welfare Agency in every state has a joint project that they work on with their Child Welfare Agency, or that they work on in collaboration. So ours, historically, the 5-6 years has been Project Wraparound, and that's Davidson County. So that is a joint project between us, between the CIP, DCS, and MNPS. Now, when that project started, the court was involved in it, but as time went on, especially after COVID, the court became less and less involved in that. And so as a result, we are the court improvement program. So if our court's not really engaged in the project, it's hard for us to keep that thread going. And so this particular project, this joint project, is winding down. It's in its last year in our role with the joint project. Part of the reason why the court became less involved in it is it was pretty self-sufficient, and it remains that way. DCS and MNPS speak every day now. Part of what happened, honestly, as a result of federal law in 2015, the federal government passed the Every Student Succeeds Act, which requires school stability for kids that are in foster care. And that was such a big part of Project Wraparound, ensuring that kids that are in foster care are offered school stability when it's in their best interest. It had been part of the federal child welfare law since 2008, but states were really slow to implement that with fidelity. And then we had our joint project that was really focused on that implementation. And the federal law had come around, federal law around education, the Every Student Succeeds Act had come along around the same time and really improved the fidelity of the school stability provisions. And now the system is a lot more functional than it was in 2017 and 2018 when the project started. Now we see DCS and MNPS talking regularly and they have systems now to support that school stability piece for kids that are in foster care. And so as a result of increasing compliance with the federal law and those systems that support that compliance, we just have less engagement in that project because it's kind of running pretty well. Not that there aren't problems, there are always problems, but there's systems set up for the agencies to communicate with each other and problem solve and to support the needs of students. So we are now looking at a new joint project that's probably going to be focused on foster care review board, since that's already so much of what I do at the AOC. It's probably going to align with the work that I already do. But education remains one of my real focus priority areas, even in that area of foster care review board. Of course, if you've seen foster care review board or if you provide service on foster care review board, you know one of the important review criteria is well-being. And one of the pieces of considerations relevant to well-being is education. So it comes in, and I'm doing education trainings and I'm doing education support and making sure education is still a focus area that I have and that the AOC has related to whatever happens with our new joint project. Education's not going anywhere in terms of our focus and support. So the other one is quality court hearings, and so we have to provide support around quality hearings, and that focus has also been foster care review boards because I do that too. So that is that model board process and making sure that model boards are supported. So if you've heard of model foster care review board, all that is it's an opt-in model for courts that have foster care review board to be in contact with us, to be in regular connection with us. We provide a lot of support for our model foster care review boards, and we do coaching and we do training and we do observation. If you've seen me at Davidson County, it's because you guys are a model foster care review board. So I talk to your court facilitator, Jessica Robertson, all the time. Sumner County is also one. Murray County is also one. There's about 15 counties that have model boards, and those are the boards that I'm connected to. I'll be observing in Sevier later this week virtually, and in Hickman tomorrow. It's part of that role, supporting our boards and making sure that we are maintaining that requirement that's laid out in the statute and in the rules of juvenile practice and procedure, and ensuring that children and families are getting the support and information that they need in those reviews so that the court can understand what's going on in the family and we can get feedback from them that we can provide to the court, and also so that the court can be assured that they know of any big changes that have happened with regard to the children and the family over the course of the last 3 months or whatever, however long it's been since that last hearing. The other item that is our priority is the data quality project. I'm not involved in that one. That is Rumian. He does all of our data, and Elizabeth supports that too. That is not a big part of my role. I just collect the data, I'm told to, because I'm not really a data person as much as I am a people person. So that is what we do. Increase quality legal representation. That should really be improved. Quality legal representation or increased access to quality legal representation. That is part of the work that we do around education and training with our attorneys. I'm going to talk to you guys about all the training that we provide. We also have, in case you're familiar, a new attorney training support program called Ripple, which stands for the Representation Improvement Project Supporting Legal Excellence. And it is meant to be a supportive training program for attorneys that are kind of new to this work that helps them get training and support kind of in a cohort model. So we have right now, we have 10 new-ish attorneys that are part of that training cohort model, and we do some in-person and some virtual support for those attorneys. And the idea is if we can bring these folks in, give them the support that they need early in their career, then it will ripple out and it will support quality practice across Tennessee. We have a small group of people though, and so I know that there's been some quality issues with legal representation across Tennessee, and part of that is just the challenge of having low compensation across Tennessee, honestly. And there's challenges in that. You've got to be able to attract the attorneys that are wanting to go the extra mile. And that's one of the challenges that we just have to deal with in Tennessee right now. And I know that our larger organization, the AOC, is actively advocating for changes to the payment structure so that we can help recruit attorneys that really want to support children and families in the way that we all know they should be supported. And that's a work in progress. So we're trying. But in terms of what we do, we provide that training related to Ripple. And we also provide training around representation skills, and ongoing every month we have training related to some aspect of child welfare. One of the big aspects of improving the quality of child welfare in Tennessee is a focus on reasonable efforts. So we have a reasonable efforts training that we do once a year. We're going to be doing it Thursday and Friday of next week annually, and it is a 2-day interactive simulation-based training experience for attorneys that want more connection and more working knowledge of the reasonable efforts requirements under federal and state law that can help support a higher quality, higher touch support for our children and families that are trying to reunify or to help children achieve whatever permanency goal they have in their plan. It's the reasonable efforts of the Department of Children's Services. So it's a way that we help make sure that the department is doing what it should for families through this court supervision of their reasonable efforts. So we have a whole attorney academy starting next week. So that is something else we do. And previously we did a whole training on child welfare basics with the National Association of Counsel for Children. That was something we did a couple of years ago. And then we have supported the Connecting for Children's Justice Conference. previously. Okay, so I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about our multidisciplinary community training, because that really pertains to the service that you provide. And I wanted to let you know it was there. I know many of you probably already participate in some of our trainings, and I hope that if you aren't connected, that you'll consider becoming connected. So we have on-demand distance learning training. It's continuing legal education. So attorneys can get CLE credit for their participation, but you don't have to be an attorney to attend. And we would invite you to attend whether you want CLE or not, because it pertains, if you're working with the courts, you're familiar with the aspects of that process that would support your learning in an environment about the court processes. You probably have, if you're connected to courts, you probably have the prior knowledge you need to be able to really tune in to the sessions. But you'll see in some of our trainings, some are more legal based and some are less legal based. We have to provide that CLE, so there's always going to be a part of a legal focus, but it's also got a multidisciplinary focus. And I try to make sure when I'm doing the training, I do most of it, and I try to make sure when I'm doing the training that I am speaking to the larger multidisciplinary community, because it's not just lawyers that make our system run. We have judges, and we have CASA, and we have foster care review boards, and we have all of us together that are helping support a healthy system. And honestly, DCS often comes to our trainings. And it's funny, I did a couple of sessions last year on different aspects of the Department of Children's Services policy. And I had DCS workers on the training asking their DCS legal questions about what they should or shouldn't do. And I thought that that was interesting. I mean, it's just another avenue. We should support each other. I'm glad DCS workers or court liaisons would want to attend our trainings. They would want to talk to DCS legal. I'm glad we can be in community this way, because we should be on the same team and we should be supporting each other. The fact that there's a built-in accountability system is good and important for a healthy relationship and healthy outcomes for our children and our families. So we do a live training. So last year I did a live training the fourth Friday of every month at noon for 1 hour. This year we got some feedback, and you guys know, if you've been on the sessions, I'm always beating the feedback drum. Please fill out your evaluation form and let us know how we did. We did that all last year, and the feedback we got was that we got feedback about adding specific topics, and we also got feedback about extending the time. Folks wanted more time in those trainings. So now we do them for 90 minutes. So, and we're also doing them on the first Friday now and not the last Friday, because my last Friday, several months of 2025 is booked. So I moved it to the first Friday. So that's where I am at noon, the first Friday of every month, except for July 4th, because that's a holiday. We'll do it on the 11th in July. Every other first Friday of every month at noon will be on our Zoom. So I'm going to tell you how to get that information in a minute. The other thing we do is provide templates, rules, statutes, case laws, bench cards. For a lot of our trainings, I have created resource cards that folks can use in court if they support children and families, or just as a reference guide for their information. So that's available on our website too. We did one for, we did a qualified residential treatment facility or qualified residential treatment program training at the end of 2024. We had a resource guide for that. We had one on ICPC. We created a resource card for that. I just did a training on the impact of removals in January, created a resource card for that, and that's going to get ready to go up on our website. I think today, I look over it at my door because Elizabeth's working on that today, I know, so it should be posted any minute now. The other thing we do is we connect with internal and external stakeholders and partnerships. We have partnerships across our child welfare system with courts and with DCS, and also with organizations like CASA. We are connected to make sure that we are providing the support for the community that we need to. We have a multidisciplinary task force. Lynn Farah, who is the director of CASA, is part of that. task force of statewide CASA. She's part of that task force, so she helps advise us on our work and helps us make sure that we are inclusive of our community when we're providing support. And then we have special work groups that sometimes work on particular priorities. So I told you I'd tell you more about the training and how to get access to it. So this is our website. This is what it looks like. It's tncourts.gov. And so on tncourts.gov, you'll see we have an on-demand distance learning. So this is all the training that we've done. And this on-demand distance training is really multidisciplinary. It offers CLE. So our lawyers, the ones that are practicing independency and neglect, all lawyers have a continuing legal education requirement. And so they'll take these courses to meet that requirement. It's for our dependency and neglect attorneys. Occasionally we get attorneys that are practicing in other areas that just want free CLE. That's not really who it's for. It's for our community. And we want to make sure that our lawyers who may feel underappreciated at least know they have a place where they can get free CLE. That's from us. And so all the trainings that we did in 2024 and in 2023 for that matter are on our distance learning webpage. And so this is where you'll find that ICPC training I was just talking about, where you'll find the QRTP training I was talking about. That one's not posted yet because I did it in December, but Elizabeth's posting it today. So all that training, if you want to watch a training about a particular topic, that's where you'll find it. If you find you would like more information about a topic that we haven't covered, you should reach out to me. I'll share my email address at the end. And we are looking at training all the time. I'll show you what our plan is for 2025. I'm still waiting for final approval on that. So I say that it's subject to change, although I think it's pretty finalized. But that's what we worked on in 2024. Here was the last several sessions we did in 2024, just so you know what's available on our website. You'll see I did a basics training, then planning for permanency. The first two trainings were education trainings. Reading a transcript, that's an important part of your support of children in particular, especially as they reach high school and prepare to graduate from high school, hopefully. Knowing how to do that. That was our February session. That's available on our website. And these are some of the other aspects. I talked to you a little bit about reasonable efforts before. David Grimmett did a training for us. He is a Davidson County attorney. He did a training for us on reasonable efforts case law, some of the updates. He also did a case law update. We did an ICWA training, the Indian Child Welfare Act, the ICPC, and QRTP. Live trainings, so I want to talk about 2025 trainings. They are, if you go to our court improvement website and you go to trainings here on that menu, you'll see our live trainings and you'll have a calendar. So this is an older screenshot, but you can see that we had multiple trainings set up in June, and we do every month. And so you just click on that and then you can register. You can register for any training. Again, you don't have to be an attorney and you don't have to want CLE. In fact, it's easier for Elizabeth if you don't need CLE. So know that these trainings are available and open for you. The distance and the ongoing live trainings are as well. So here are the first Friday training series that I'm doing in 2025. Part one, it was really the impact of removal. As I went through it, it was more the impact of removal than the harm of removal, because we understand that removal into foster care always has a lasting impact. It's not always harmful. And that was one of the things that we highlighted in the training. It is in the moment, it's always a jarring experience for kids, but it doesn't always cause long-term harm. So I changed that a little bit to the impact of removal. Part two, I did that based on the research. So just keep that in mind. I talk about the research when in that session, and that's going to be posted, I hope, today on our distance learning page that I just covered with you guys, so you know where to find it. Part two, February 7th, I've got a juvenile court basic overview. One of the things I talk about in that basics overview is that court process after the removal, because I covered the removal in part one. So in part two, I focused on what happens after that removal happens in the court side. And then we talk about the the attorney process, what attorneys are doing and their representation of children and families, and those review hearings on the road to permanency. And we also talk about foster parent rights, because that is a topic that we all need to be aware of. Foster parents long-term foster parents in particular have a right to have a voice in hearings now. And that is something that changed a couple of years ago. And we want to make sure we're highlighting that because it's relevant to judicial practice in Tennessee. And so we try to make sure that folks are aware that foster parents do have a voice. They should have been receiving notice, but we need to make sure that we are clearing a space to hear what they want to tell the court. Part 3, we're going to talk about the roles of attorneys, GALs, and we're going to do, that's going to be an ethics. If you're an attorney, that's relevant because it's hard to get ethics sometimes, but we're going to have ethics in that part 1, and we also had ethics in that part 3, but we also had ethics in part 1. We had in part 4, that'll be April, we've had folks ask about DCS policy. So we're going to invite probably one of the general counsels from DCS over to the AOC Zoom to help us talk about DCS policy in Tennessee. So I think that'll be good. We'll talk about case plans, reunification. We'll talk about substance abuse because that is a major reason why kids come into care in Tennessee. And adoption and permanency planning. We get a lot of questions around supporting non-citizen children in Tennessee foster care. And I know in Davidson and Shelby in particular, that comes up a lot for our courts. So we do have an older immigration and child welfare training. We're going to have a new session on immigration considerations in August. And then September, we're going to do a case law update, probably with David Grimmett again. And then we're going to do some trial skills. So those are going to be really kind of attorney focused, unless you're interested, but you are welcome. Everybody's welcome, whether you're an attorney or not. If you want to learn more about their trial skills, you are welcome to come join us. But there will probably be some simulations in part 10 and part 11. So that's in October and November. And then finally, we're going to close the series out with a focus on trauma-informed practices. First, do no harm, and we'll talk about that process and how to make sure that we are sensitive to the needs of our children and our families by being as trauma-informed as possible. That is probably what I'm going to cover. And there's my email address. Feel free to shoot me an email. In the last training that we did, I really, because we're getting a lot of CLEs at the end of the year. And so Elizabeth, our projects coordinator, was telling me that she was getting all these CLEs from folks that don't practice in dependency and neglect. And so when I did the CLE in January, I said, hey, if you're here getting free CLE, that's great. Consider taking an appointment in juvenile court. And I actually had a couple of people reach out and say, how can you support me? How can I get better trained to be competent in juvenile court? And so I connected them with people in my network so that they can observe in juvenile court and get better at that. The other thing I told them is if you can't take an appointment right now and you're here, consider volunteering for Foster Care Review Board. Consider volunteering for CASA. And I had somebody reach out and ask to be connected to Foster Care Review Board. So I sent their information along to the court. And I'm so happy that maybe this will be another way to help recruit folks to our community and help dispel some of their concerns about whether or not they would be able or have the capacity to support, because, whether it's Foster Care Review Board or CASA, or if they're an attorney representation, there's a way to plug in and support our community. And I know that's the work that you guys are doing now. And so we really appreciate it. And we are your partner. And if we can ever help you, reach out and we'll figure out a way to be supportive. And so I see there are a couple of items in the chat. Thanks, Karen. I appreciate it. Thanks for sharing that link, Sarah. I appreciate it. So if you have any questions, just ask away. That's our basic. This is what the CIP is. This is what we do. And we want to be helpful to you. So what else do you want to know?
Thank you, Carrie. I know that I have a question, but I want to see if our volunteers give them the opportunity to ask first. And folks, you can just feel free to unmute and ask away.
I hate to interrupt, but I did want to say that I'm here. I didn't show up on any of the list of people, but it was very interesting. I'm so glad you guys are out there doing this. And I look forward to some of the training. It sounds so good. So
Good.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Who's speaking?
Anne Craft.
Well, hi, Anne. Thank you for being
Hi,
here.
my pleasure.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to ask about, you mentioned that one of the trainings that you all did was around reasonable efforts, and that
Yes.
has to do with attorneys. If I'm grasping this correctly, attorneys kind of knowing what DCS should be doing to help support families.
Yes.
And I was kind of surprised in one of the trainings that I went to around the efforts that DCS workers need to be putting into helping families find housing,
Mhm.
especially considering the housing crisis in Nashville that we all are aware of, but just providing folks with a list of affordable housing is not enough for DCS workers to do for parents. And that was just kind of a surprise to me. Like they need to put more effort into that, sit down with them. And that could be, ding them later on in court if they aren't doing those things to try to move kids towards permanency. Um, at least that was my understanding during that.
No, that's in a nutshell. That was a really good summary, I think.
Well, I wanted to see if there were other things around reasonable efforts that you think our volunteers might need to know about that could hinder permanency or just anything in general. Like, we don't expect our volunteers to have all this legal information, but I'm wondering if there's some kind of more basic things that you think would be helpful for all our volunteers to be aware of so that they can kind of advocate for those things to happen if they see them not happening, or if there's things that, yeah, just anything that you think would be good advice for our folks.
Yeah, I think that in my work as a guardian, I was a guardian ad litem for the Davidson County Public Defender's Office. So we had the Education Rights Project. They still do. In fact, Emily Adams, who currently serves as GAL education attorney in the PD's office now, if you guys have seen her running around the courthouse, is one of our Ripple attorneys, one of our new service attorneys that we have brought into that cohort to be supportive of. So that was the role that I had when I was in Nashville in the PD's office. And so I know that I was always very connected to the CASAs that were supporting my families, the children that I worked with. And I know that if she had a concern, like I'm just thinking of one in particular, a case that went on for a very long time. The CASA on that case, if she had a concern about the department's work, she would tell me. And I was the attorney that could file a motion if a motion needed to be filed, if there was a lack of services. I want to step back a little bit and talk a little bit about what reasonable efforts are and why they're required, because I touched on it. But since you asked, I just want to make sure that we have like a shared understanding, if that's okay. So I said that the DCS provides services to the family, and the court is its accountability partner and makes sure that those services are adequate to support the needs of the family. The way that the court provides that supervision and oversight is through the reasonable efforts requirement. That's part of the federal child welfare law that allows the Department of Children's Services to receive federal funds. So DCS is in receipt of federal funds to support children in foster care. They don't get federal funds. It's federal reimbursement funds to support the cost of foster care. They don't get it for every child that's in DCS custody. The children have to have come from a home that meets the income guidelines, the poverty guidelines, number one, and also they have to have they have to be a qualified alien. That's the federal language, not mine. They have to be essentially in the country legally. And so If those requirements are met, then there's federal funding that DCS can pull down, but only if they're providing reasonable efforts. So if DCS isn't providing reasonable efforts, then they can lose those federal funds if they don't fix it fast. Like the court is the determiner. The court makes that determination. Are there reasonable efforts? Yes or no. The court decides. The judge decides. The judge will hear the evidence and make a determination about whether there have been reasonable efforts. The way the system is set up, there's always times to fix it before those federal funds will stop for a child that is eligible for those 4E funds. But they do have to fix it, because if they let it go for too long, every 12 months, there has to be a reasonable efforts finding. Yes, there were reasonable efforts. And if it goes longer than 12 months, then after that 12th month, that funding will stop. DCS can fix it. They can go back and rectify the situation, and the funds will be restored in most cases, unless there weren't reasonable efforts to prevent removal to begin with. That's another story. But on the road to reunification, as long as they fix it before 12 months after that last reasonable efforts finding, that funding will remain. So it's built in with a grace period. And so it really is a way for the court to say, hey, DCS, this is not enough. We need you to be doing more. And then what happens is DCS, the local staff are connected with the general counsel's office, and ideally that family gets the support that they needed all along. So that's sort of the lay of the land in terms of reasonable efforts and how that system works. And so we ask that our attorneys just be aware that that reasonable efforts requirement is there, and then advocate for reasonable efforts when they don't think their children or parents are getting what they need to support whatever that permanency goal is. And as you said, Sarah, we have case law in Tennessee that says that a housing list, is inadequate. Reasonable efforts aren't defined specifically in the law, but we do know, according to our case law, that it's more than just a list. But what is it exactly? It depends. There's not a bright line. It's case by case. And at the end of the day, it's going to be up to that judicial officer about whether the efforts of the department were adequate. It's up to that judicial officer. They decide whether or not the efforts were reasonable. And so, but it is a way to kind of move things along. The other thing I want to say too, while reasonable efforts are tied to this federal reimbursement on the federal level, and that federal reimbursement only flows through for some kids that meet the requirements, it's statutory for every child in DCS custody in the state of Tennessee. So they're required to do it. There's just only that funding hook for certain kids that meet the qualifications. But I like to emphasize that just because there's no federal hook for some of those kids, it's still the state law. There's still a general statute that says, the Tennessee code that says that they have to provide reasonable efforts to prevent removal before kids come into care, to reunify if return to parent is the goal of the permanency plan, or to achieve whatever permanency outcome is on the plan, if it's adoption, if it's guardianship, whatever that goal is, to proceed to make progress towards that goal. So that is, so that then to answer your question, Sarah, go all the way back. Reach out to your GAL or your parent attorney that you're working with, because you're supporting that whole family. So if you see a parent trying but not receiving the help they need, check in with that attorney and say, hey, what do you think about this? I think this is a reasonable efforts issue. Do you think that? I just talked to an attorney last week that said that they were in court and the attorney hadn't filed a motion, because a reasonable efforts motion would bring that to the attention of the court. The attorney was thinking about filing, hadn't filed, and the judicial officer said, hey, you know what? I don't need it. He asked for a motion, and then he said, you know what? I don't need a motion. I'm going to find no reasonable efforts right now in this hearing. So sometimes it'll just come up. And so and we're trying to push this training out to our bar and to our bench, our bar being attorneys, our bench being our judges, so that they know that they can do that. And it's a way of adding accountability. And I always say to our DCS attorneys, and they know this, accountability is what makes a healthy system. Nobody's playing gotcha. This is their jobs are so hard. We know that, but you've got to do your best work. And your best work has to support children and families. And we're in this together 100%, but we have to have accountability to have a healthy system. And this is the accountability piece, reasonable efforts. That's what we have to work with. And so we are going to help, our legal community understand what that looks like. And you guys are part of that multidisciplinary community that supports those outcomes for children and families. And so I would say connect with the attorneys on the case if you're concerned about it, but know that it can come up even if your attorneys haven't brought it up.
I'm noting a couple of questions in the chat. How much do you think magistrates value foster care review board?
That's a good question. So they should value foster care review board a lot. But I will say that some of our judges have across Tennessee have different levels of understanding of how foster care review board works with their court. And so one of the things that came up recently with our judicial team, because we do training with our judges every 6 months. And so we have a training coming up in February, and our judicial team that supports that juvenile court judge training asked if I would be willing to do a training on foster care review board for our judges. So I know that there's different levels of understanding around foster care review board in our courts across Tennessee, but I hope to change that with a training in February, because I think many of our judges get it, but we have magistrates that may not have had the same training, may not have been in the same trainings. Our judicial conference is everybody, and so it's an opportunity to get everybody onto the same page. And so I hope that I'm able to do that, because I know that there's some inconsistent understanding across Tennessee. And so when I do training now locally, I'll go to Davidson County or go to Murray County or go wherever and do training. We do ask at the CIP that the judge or magistrate that's supervising foster care review board be there, because in some courts it's one magistrate or one judge. But in Davidson, when you have 7 magistrates, when you have so many magistrates supporting one judge, it can be sort of tricky because they all have cases going to foster care review board. And that's different than in some other counties. So it's just a little ungainly. And I guess when we do the next training in Davidson County, I can talk to Jessica Robertson, the lead facilitator, about how we can ensure that the magistrates get the training that they need, because they have to be supervising those findings of those recommendations of foster care review board in order to do their job under the statute. And so having an opportunity to make sure that we've told them that is, I think, especially useful. So I know it's uneven. Judges should know it's all in the statute, it's all in the rule, and they are enforcing those items. And so I hope that I have an opportunity to impress that upon them, because a lot of times too, for our judicial officers, if they know there's just someone they can pick up the phone and call, we'll see better compliance. I'm not going to make you read a book, just call me. And so hopefully if I can get in front of them and tell them all the things they need to know and tell them to pick up the phone and call me, that we'll see some improved compliance.
Thank you. Our next question was, we sometimes get frustrated with guardian ad litems who don't do anything except for show up in court, meaning don't attend CFTMs or even meet the kids. Do you have any advice about what we can do to make sure the children get the representation they deserve?
Yeah, that is deeply troubling. And I know I've heard that too. And that guardian ad litem role is so important, and that was the capacity I served in. When I think about that happening, it's so alarming, because I was, in some cases, the person that was making sure kids were removed from homes that were unsafe. And if you've got somebody that's not engaged, that can be dangerous, because DCS isn't always on top of everything, and the moment they need to be on top of it, it's another set of eyes on. So I will just say, first of all, that I know that things aren't great right now. And if you feel like you've got a GAL that's not doing anything, the only person that has control over that guardian ad litem in that case is the judge or the magistrate that's supervising that case. They have the power to remove the GAL. They have the power to order, some activity from the GAL. The judge appoints. And so that would be the authority there. We don't have, while we pay them through ACAP, the AOC does that. That doesn't happen in our office. That happens in our larger AOC. The ACAP funding flows through. We don't have any supervisory authority over those folks. The judges have the authority to require training. But the system right now, I mentioned earlier in the training that the compensation rates are pretty low for attorneys right now. And so that is going to be an issue for recruitment. We're not necessarily attracting our best and our brightest to the bar right now, honestly. And we know that. It's one of the reasons why the AOC has been meeting with the legislature and talking about how we can do this better in Tennessee so that our children and families have access to better representation. So if you're in a case and you've got a guardian ad litem that is not pulling their weight, number one, I'm sorry that's happening. Number two, thank God for you, because if not you, I don't know, if not for your role in the case, they'd be in real trouble. So thank you for supporting them. I would bother them. I'd show up in court. And if they're not showing up in court, I'd ask that, or, at board, I'd ask for the foster care review board to consider that in their recommendations. I mean, ultimately the foster care review board, they decide on their own whether or not they're going to make a certain recommendation and what that recommendation is going to be. So they make the determination. But asking that the foster care review board make a recommendation that the guardian ad litem go to that next CFTM, or call into that next CFTM, considering a recommendation for that role is something that you can do. But it's a little sticky right now. It's a little sticky right now because we know we don't have the numbers. We don't have the numbers. And that's one of the reasons why when I do the trainings, I say, if you're not taking appointments, consider taking appointments. Reach out to me. I'll connect you with an attorney that will let you observe and mentor you. We'll support you so that you're competent in your role, because there is the duty to be competent. And that is guided by the rules of professional conduct. There's supervision there too, bar complaints and such. But
yeah, it's a delicate, tricky situation when it seems like it's the same 10 attorneys that are taking all of the cases in juvenile court. And it's not an excuse, but what I noticed in my time as a CASA team leader is that one of the reasons that they're not at these CFTMs is because they're always in court. And again, it's not to make an excuse, but if you're finding that in one of your cases, I would just encourage you to talk to your CASA team leader to brainstorm ways that you can communicate that in ways that, again, it's a delicate situation because you want to protect your relationship with these guardian ad litems, but at the same time, we do need to raise concerns in the ways that we can, whether that's talking about it in an effective way in your court report, maybe bringing it up at foster care review board. There's different ways we can communicate it, but and it's something that we're talking to Judge Calloway about in our quarterly meetings. She's aware of it. CASA leadership, myself, Juliana, we meet with Judge on a regular basis, and Magistrate Wade. So we're all thinking about it and talking about it. There's not an easy solution, Suzanne, as I'm sure you know, working with CASA for as many years as you did. But yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, and I see Pat's comment about getting one assigned after somebody was pretty inactive for 2 years. I shudder to think about the effect that lack of advocacy had on a child or a family. Sarah, when you talk to Judge or to Magistrate Wade, you let them know that we'll come to them and provide any training and support for them locally. We do these, statewide virtual trainings, but I'll come in person and support them. That's something that we've done in Shelby a few times. Gone and trained the bar in person because I don't know, sometimes for some people it's just better if you can see them and see if they've gone to sleep. That happened to me once. But we're here to support them too. And I do care so much about that role because it is so impactful. And gosh, in terms of moving a child towards permanency, a zealous advocate has so much ability to help move that case and provide safety and support for a child. It pains me, and I know it pains you guys too because you're in this work for all the same reasons that I was. So thank you for being there with your families, and I understand that relationship is important, but Sarah has offered, I think, really good advice. Talk to your team leader and see if you can't problem solve that together.
I want to be protective of your time. We're at the hour, but I just wanted to see those resource cards that you mentioned. Are those located on that website as well where we could find them? Okay, great.
Yeah. And the distance learning. So a couple of things. We do have a guide resource section on our website. And so there's some foster care review board stuff. There's an education manual there that I completely revised a couple of years ago, or maybe a year ago. It's got the newest, latest, and the greatest information in it. And then for the individual topical sessions, ICPC, QRTP, impact of removal, those resource cards are grouped with the virtual trainings that are on distance. So you can find them there. I'm not sure if I think some of the resource cards have migrated also. They'll be in two places. They'll be in those guides and manual section of our webpage and with the materials, but I'm not sure if all of them made it over there.
Awesome.
But if you ever need something, I also did a resource card for education. And so it has all information about that school stability piece, special education, getting to graduation. I hope useful stuff. If you see something we're missing, let me know. I care, again, I care about improving these outcomes and getting you guys the resources that you need to be able to provide the service that you do is really important to me. So if I'm missing something, let me know and we'll try to put that together.
Awesome. Well, I would not be doing my job if I didn't encourage all of our volunteers to please record this training hour in Optima. 12 of those required a year. If you have questions about how to do that, please talk to your team leader. We have an upcoming training with Suzanne, a longtime CASA staff member, current peer coordinator, who has 20+ years of experience, coming up on February the 3rd at noon. Your team leaders should have sent you an invitation to that. If not, it's also in our monthly newsletter information about that. So please do join us on that. Thank you, Suzanne, for being available for that. And thank you, Carrie, so much for all the amazing work that you're doing and for being with us today. Staffers, CASA, am I forgetting anything? Anything you all want to plug? All right. Well, any of those trainings that also you find on Carrie's website can count towards your continuing education hours as well. So please, I encourage you all to check those out. And again, thank you.
Thank you guys. Have a great day.
Everybody have a great day.
Thanks so much. Bye.
You're welcome. Bye.